And then there's the other extreme. There's the trainer who's overly knowledgeable. And these ones you got to be careful with too, because like they're doing contrast training, they're doing all these crazy programming. And the reality is most of this advanced programming can only be done for the one percenters. So I've trained pro athletes. I remember I was working with one of the Yankees a couple years ago, the New York Yankees, and like I have to dig into my toolbox and I'm using those tools that I could literally only use on him. But a lot of these trainers will advertise that 1% of tools that they'll never be able to use. I have some tools, man, I wish I had a LeBron James walk into my facility. I really do. Because a lot of the tools that we have, these advanced programming tools, advanced methods, like these people are not going to be ready for that for years or maybe ever. So I feel like you have the other extreme of trainers that are like overly qualified and almost like they're trying to force themselves to use their cool tools, which to me makes me look at them the opposite way. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. I mean, I fell into that before. But I feel like a part of it is trainers trying to impress other trainers. When, it always has to come down to the child or the client in front of you. So yeah, you can fall in love with the intellectual part. And if you look at the research, it's like all that fancy stuff doesn't necessarily make you a better athlete. I think the reason you see that with professional athletes is because they're training year round, and training is their life. So you need the variability in the different programming and the periodizing. You have to switch it up. So, yeah. And it's novel, so it like keeps you engaged. But yeah, for kids, for people just not at that level where training is your life, it becomes it's pretty much just the trainer's ego, I feel like. And once again, I've been there.
Yeah. And well, it's a feat of strength.
Yeah. You learn.
It's a feat of strength. I don't. You asked me, David, like, what's the most important thing for training? And the first thing I told you, the most important rule of training is do no harm. Don't hurt somebody. Don't ever let somebody walk out hurt or feeling worse than they walked in. That's like the number one rule. Don't hurt somebody. So I would assume that even though you said, "Oh, I've done it before," I don't. Craig, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think someone's ever walked in and then walked out injured after a session with you.
No, it's just just overly fancy for the sake of it. Who am I trying to impress? Right? That's it is.
So there's definitely a gray area there, because the only person that's ever been hurt trying something fancy is probably myself trying something fancy. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try that. I was like, that's a cool exercise.
At least you tried it first.
Yeah, I tried it first. I'm like, that was, my lower back did not like that. That was not a good idea. So I always like to guinea pig myself first on certain things. But question for you. So you train athletes, you also train general population. So you have, you have your generalist, right? And then you have somebody a little more specific, an athlete. How do you approach, or what's same versus similar? The athlete walks in and says, "Hey man, I'm a baseball player or wrestler," versus, "Hey, I'm 6 years old and I got 2 knee replacements." What's similar? What's different for each one?
Yeah. It's very similar conceptually. Like I'm trying to do a lot of the same things, but with the athlete, you're just going to spice it up and bump it up. You're just going to gear it up because the capacity is going to be a little bit higher. For the maybe elderly or gen pop person just coming in who's sedentary, same goal, but now we're going to have to scale it down. We're going to have to modify things and regress things. And then, the rest is kind of just the icing on the cake. So with a wrestler, I'm going to focus on, okay, I want their neck to be strong because that's the demands of the sport they're in, which I'm not going to give that to the soccer mom coming in necessarily, right?
Neck training.
But yeah, when you look at the leg, I'm like, hey, I want to train this squat pattern. For a football player, that might be a barbell, box squatting, lots of weight. For a gen pop person, that might be they're on a ramp doing a goblet squat with a dumbbell. They're just in different places as far as what they can do, but I'm trying to do the same thing with both of them, which is, get them stronger, give them more movement, have them feel better. So yeah, similar similar thing when I look at someone coming in, but then we just take it on the individual level and personalize it as we go.
Awesome. How would you define strength?
Strength. Ooh, that's
his ears perked up.
That's one of those things you're talking about, like the different lenses everyone sees.
That's
things.
why I'm asking you, because we all have our own definition.
And yeah, so almost to escape that lens, because like you said, if you ask a power lifter, their strength is going to be measured on the big three, like how much do you bench, how much do you squat and deadlift. If you ask a Olympic lifter, maybe it's one of the snatch or clean and jerk. If you have a CrossFitter, it's like they use a general WOD to measure it. So I say that strength is pretty much a skill, right? So you can build a skill in any different field of strength you want. And that's kind of a personal goal, I feel like. But yeah, that's a way to dodge the question, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like it's a skill at the end of the day. So I see people who they want to, when they come in, like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, oh, I wanted like body weight strength is what they perceive as strength for them. Like, that's really cool. I want to be able to do that. I think doing that means something to me. Then like, okay, then that's something we can progress toward. Or I want to lift a bunch of weight. So like lifting load off the ground for that person means something to them. And if they don't know, I just want to get stronger and feel better, then we're going to do, general things, and we're going to see what they kind of excel at, or naturally enjoy, naturally have gifts towards their leverages, and we'll, lead and go down that path. So I think it's very
person specific.
Yeah.
Define strength. How would you define strength for yourself?
For me, yeah, just progressing. Like whatever it is, if I'm going in the direction of getting stronger or doing more reps or feeling better doing it faster, that's what matters. Like a number doesn't matter to me as much at like this point in my life. I almost just enjoy the process of moving forward in a sense, which is why learning new things is so much fun, like jujitsu, other things like that. Like I know rock climbers who are pretty scrawny, but they can like crimp and hold their body weight up with 2 fingers. Like that's strength to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they can't deadlift their body weight. So jujitsu, someone who could, wrap their legs in a certain position, pretzel you and squeeze. That's strength to me. So it's a task. What do you want to do with your body? And strength is getting closer to and being more competent in that.
That's awesome. I like the way you explain strength. I have a similar definition, bias towards speed. When people go, what's speed? I'm like, well, it depends. Like Luke, the long distance runner, I would say he has a ton of speed relative to cross country runners.
Over distance and time.
And he has burst, he has acceleration, he has power, he has all these attributes that don't get trained, but I put him in a different environment. All of a sudden it's like, oh, his speed is not effective in, running a go route. So I think strength, speed is specific. It's your ability to produce force specified to the environment that you're exposed to. So like, I remember one time when I first learned about, the specificity of strength, and I remember listening to a lecture on like developing power within your sport. It completely changed. This is probably maybe like 4 years ago. I started doing power specific for everything. So for example, power back then was defined as like the ability to PR on a deadlift, a squat, or whatever, or even on a straight line. How fast can you run? And I was like, power is just a neurological thing, right? 90 to 100% effort. And so I started doing power throws with my baseball players. I said, we're going to do max effort throws. And the purpose of max effort in baseball, they're never doing max effort ever. They're going to blow out their arm. I said, we're going to treat it the same way we do any other power activity. We're going to start doing power throws. And then what does power do? It brings up all the other levels. So then everyone started throwing harder. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So then I do power year round now with athletes relative to, I'll make them use a 90 to 100% maximal effort relative to the thing they're trying to get good at. One of the things I started working in jiu-jitsu, because I've been training that for about 4 years now, I practice my squeeze. I'll get a foam roller and I would literally, I think I posted a video about this, and I will squeeze the hell out of it to the point of exhaustion for like 5-6 seconds of maximal effort squeezing. Now, am I ever going to squeeze somebody that hard? Absolutely not. But then people started telling me like, dude, your squeeze is insane. And I'm like, in my head, I'm comparing it to my max effort. I'm like, that was like 40%. And it's because I started developing squeeze power and strength with that motion. So I find a lot of people I like how you said strength is a skill, because I find a lot of people will train to develop strength and power in something that's irrelevant. Like, why would I use all this neurological juice on a power clean when I'm a pitcher? Why not use that same neurological juice on throwing? You know, so I found that, that was an eye opener for me. And it's quoted here, strength is a skill. You guys heard it, DJ. Strength is a skill. you got one for him?
I never looked at it that way, because for the longest time I always saw people doing, because I guess we get in a way we can say like you doing that squeeze power drill for 6 seconds was like you're trying to PR for 6 seconds, but at the same time it's increasing your max capacity, right? I never looked at it that way, because for the longest time I was always afraid I didn't want to get injured until I heard you guys right now even talk about it a bit more, because when you talk about throwing on that much tension and stuff like that, you're afraid you might do something wrong, but if you do it correctly, it's beneficial to increase the capacity. Because I always thought, well, if I just do my 8 reps of a normal weight, it's going to increase my strength, which is true to an extent, but to really increase that strength, you kind of have to do that 6-second max effort to really start increasing the max ability to be able to perform with the weight and increase the strength within the normalcy of a 40% effort version of it. And so that was actually yeah, like you said, you had your eyes open. I just had mine finally open. I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm about to. They got so much to chew on from this whole talk today, and we're barely even in it. I feel like still, but and I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to state like that was a really cool idea right there about the whole eye opening of how to increase the actual strength versus. Because a lot of times we go in the gym, and a lot of people are like, oh, just do 4x8s, and that will increase it at 50%. And I was like, okay. Which it does somewhat, right? And then you come in here and talk about it, I'm like, that makes sense, because we need to be able to understand our max effort, and we need to increase our ability to do a max effort, and therefore the other in-betweens go up themselves too. I never looked at it like that.
I remember a couple years ago, there's a pitcher that came in, and this dude was throwing heat. Like, he was throwing 95. And I remember talking to him, then he had a heavy accent. And so I was like, where are you from? He goes, South Africa. And he's a pro. I forget his name, but he's a pro pitcher. And I was like, man, that's crazy. I saw how he was moving. It was just beautiful to watch. And I asked him, I said, because I noticed he did a lot of sprint. He did a lot of unconventional stuff. He didn't even go in the weight room. Like, it was a huge weight room, and he didn't even walk in there. And he would throw, but different objects, baseball, volleyball, and he would get different things and throw them. And I asked him, I got to talking to him, and I was like, when did you start lifting weights? Just out of curiosity. And he goes, why do you ask? I was like, what do you think? He asked me the same question. I was like, my guess is you never started until you were in the pros. He goes, how did you know? I said, the way you move. He goes, yeah, you're right. I said, you've never been injured until you were in the pros. He goes, yeah. He goes, I started lifting weights, because I asked him about why doesn't he lift weights? He goes, when I lifted weights, I started getting injured and my velocity went down. I was like, he was expressing strength and power through his movement, and he'd been doing it his whole life. And then all of a sudden he comes out here, Americans, we're very, the way we train athletes is very like overly structured. We're one extreme or the other. We either have no structure at all. We've talked about those trainers, or we have the overly structured. And he's just like, the strength coach that he was working with, he goes, yeah, we weren't clicking. I was getting hurt. My elbow started hurting. I never had elbow pain before. So I told him I'd rather just do my own thing. Call this guy from South Africa and just asked him to send him a program. Like, and it was like the most, like he showed me the program. I laugh at it, but I'm also like, it was the most impressive, non-impressive program. So if I were to tell any pitcher today, we're going to get you to throw 95 miles an hour, not allowed to touch the weight room, that would sound like crazy, crazy. And then I remember another guy I met, same thing. I saw him hitting BP, power, so much power. And he looked older, but he looked young. He was Dominican. He said all he does is plyometrics his whole career, just plyos, and he throws different objects. He grew up in the Dominican Republic, and they would throw rocks. So that means every rock, the shape was probably a little different, but he knew how to change the angle of his body. So he was getting variability with his throwing rocks, and they would hit with sticks. And the dude was like 44, still playing. You know, I'm just like jacked. I mean, he looked like a body. He looked like he could step on stage, put some oil on him, and he was ready to go on stage. Jacked. And he goes, yeah, I don't.
But that's harder to sell.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said about other countries, because what I've noticed is the US, is really the only country with this huge, like, separate strength and conditioning field that attaches itself to collegiate programs, professional programs, and now like private high school programs, where you go to like Europe and their national team sprinter is getting their workout from their sprinting coach. Like there's no strength thing. So I'm not saying that's better or worse. Yeah. I think there's parts that are worse about that. But yeah, a lot of people, I think that's why they look to the US for strength and conditioning, because it is its own field. And we kind of push that. Like we're heavy on it, which it has a lot of upsides too. But I think you're highlighting the downside, which is they make it all about their idea of strength and conditioning in the gym, and they're not relating it to the demands of their sport or what that athlete needs.
It's like we care more about the success of the strength program than, oh, he's a pitcher. Like what does a pitcher care about? The number one thing they care about, throwing freaking hard. That is their number one priority. Number two is, I don't want to get hurt. Like if we, I don't mean to like oversimplify it, but I feel like we forget the B. You're a football player. You're a lineman. Okay. You need to be able to generate a lot of force in a short distance in a short amount of time. You got to be able to get to that quarterback quick. Like we forget the simplicity of the goal, and then we get so caught up in the process, which I'm big on process, but we get so caught up in the process that the process becomes the goal.
Yes, that's the biggest downfall right there, is you create these metrics that you're measuring to see progress, and to you it might be the clean, right? So it's like you're just so focused on, I need to get this athlete a bigger power clean, when in reality they're not a weightlifter. It doesn't matter what they get in the power clean, they get no medal for that. What matters is, does it translate to the field? Are they more athletic? Are they more prepared? And yeah, are they sacrificing? Are they getting injured because of this pursuit to now a goal that was never theirs in the first place? Yeah. You implanted it on them. So yeah, you can get lost in your own goals that you're placing on the client.
We replace their goal with our goal. Like, I just want you to run as fast as possible in a straight line. And then they never run in a straight line in football. It's like, it is easy, because I've been guilty of that. I try not to do it anymore. I would hope I don't, but it's very easy to be like, oh, deadlift went up. Yeah. You know, you get a little high five, and don't get me wrong, it's a good atmosphere. Yeah. Like when someone hits a PR, you know, I'm excited, they're excited, everyone's excited, everyone watching is like, oh, they hit a PR. I remember being in the weight room when I was at Temecula Valley High School, and when we would do PR days, like it was a big deal when everybody would circle up and watch one person going for an attempt. And it was a big deal, the energy. So it's a cultural thing. I get it. It's fun. It's really exciting. But then the guys who had the best numbers, I would say most of the time they were just average on the field. I never saw that power being expressed in a tackle. There was this linebacker I used to work with. His name is Anson, and he was strong. But he wasn't always the strongest, but he was strong. But then if you saw him tackle, you're like, holy, his power was like, I was like, I didn't see that in the weight room when we were doing the PRs. But when he would hit, I'm like, dude, he was nasty. Like he would hit so nasty. Nicest kid you ever met, but on the field just looked like he was possessed. But then those same people that just hit those PRs, the culture became they would be chasing those PRs. You're having a 17-year-old chasing a PR. I'm like, dude, you got a game in 2 days. Your nervous system is going to be shot. And then all of a sudden, I want to see that same aggression I saw on Wednesday, on Friday. And then they're arm tackling. It's just like, so I feel like we parents, coaches, we need a little more education on like where to put our efforts and like, be a little bit more strategic.
Just look at the NFL combine. The players who do the best aren't the best NFL players, right? And then you see before that, they're training for the combine. So yeah, I think you get lost in your training for the test, right? And you see that with people just like they're training the Nike Spark speed ladders, right? And that's all they do is the speed ladders, and they get really good at it.
Yeah.
And then they go on the field, and yeah, their route is worse, right?
No footwork.
You got better at the speed ladder, but from a outside perspective, it does look sexy when you see people training in the speed ladder because, it's like, oh, they're doing something that looks complex, difficult, and they're progressing. So once again, going back to what the question in the beginning, it's like all deadlifting, I love all that. But at the end of the day, you have to keep yourself honest by, are we getting better at what you define as strength or athleticism? Like, what is the skill you want to improve? So it's good to always keep testing to keep yourself honest, right?
Cool. You got anything else, Mr. David? His brain is swelling a little bit. This is just the warm up. We haven't even started talking about strength evolution. We're gonna have to do another episode.
I feel like if we go any further, you guys know the Hulk. The one of the characters from the comics where he's got the really big brain. Brainiac. Yeah. I feel like my brain's gonna end like that if we go another hour.
That's awesome. Just to kind of wrap it up, I appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us. We've had a lot of pretty cool conversations over the years, and we never had a mic behind us. And I think it's cool to, like, man, if we only recorded this conversation, well, this time we did. And if you want to let everybody know, how can they find you if they want to? I know you're in the Temecula area. How can they find you? I want to go train with Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Henry. This was awesome. So you guys could find me on Instagram at Strong Camps. I'm at a gym in Temecula called Boombox Fitness off of Jefferson and Overland.
Okay.
So yeah, anyone is free to stop by whenever they want and come hang out, check it out.
All right. Sounds good. That was fun. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys for tuning in.